All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Zach Snyder. I am a program manager at the nonprofit Solar Oregon, and I am thrilled to be here with you tonight, putting on this Coos Bay Basics of Solar. This is one of our favorite and most widely held educational programs. It's all about the basics of solar for homeowners and for business owners who are interested in learning about the technology, what incentives are available, and how to get started. And I am joined today by Jamie Faraday, who is on the line, and he's going to share his solar story. Jamie lives in Coos Bay, and so he's got some great local perspective. Let's see. So what are we here to talk about? Solar energy. We all have a good idea, most likely. But I just want to start by zooming out. And solar, it's not just the photovoltaic panels that sit on the roof. It's about harnessing energy from the sun. And there's different ways to do that. You do that even when you hang dry your laundry out in the sun. You're using that energy to wick the moisture away. When you make sun tea, there's also other types of solar energy that convert sunlight into useful forms of energy that we can use around the home, like solar thermal. We won't be talking about that today as much. This presentation is going to be focused on solar photovoltaic, just like you see on the roof here with all the solar panels. So here's a brief overview of what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to start off with what are the benefits of solar, because there's a lot of benefits that I think not everybody knows about. And we're also going to talk about, is it sunny enough? There's a myth that we don't get enough sun. It is fairly cloudy up in the Pacific Northwest, so we are going to take a quick look at that. We're going to run through how solar works. That's the basics of the technology. Is my home right for solar? We'll take a look at what makes your home have good solar access. Then we're going to talk a little bit about solar plus storage, which storage means essentially batteries for your home, like the Tesla Powerwall or a number of other analogous technologies. This is really important, especially in Coos Bay, because it's a technological combination that gives you energy resilience. So I will explain what that means and how you can think about it and why it's important. We're going to wrap up the main presentation with a look at the effects in the market, incentives, great incentives that are available that help you afford solar, the price of solar, which has come down a lot significantly in recent history. And then after this main presentation, I'm going to hand things over to Jamie, and he'll share his solar story. So before we begin, just a little bit of an overview about Solar Oregon, my nonprofit. We've been around for 40 years. So since solar was a little baby technology-wise, and now it's a very big and strong, robust industry. Our nonprofit has changed a lot in those 40 years, but we've always been focused on education and outreach. We build community around clean energy. We also do some advocacy for solar energy. Our main program, like I said, is this Basics of Solar. And we have a lot of other programs, though. We do a lot of solar tours. You'll see a picture on the right of the solar winery tour from this last year, where we go and tour wineries that have solar and hear their stories. We have other homes tours around the region, and also work on solarized campaigns, which are an exciting way for a whole community to go solar all at once. And we also do a lot of peer-to-peer education. So we're very much people-focused, education-focused, and clean energy-focused. Solar Oregon is a member-based nonprofit, and if you are a member already, thank you so much. Your membership helps make all of our educational programming possible throughout the year. If you're not a member and you're interested in becoming one, please consider joining, becoming a member. You get, most of our events around the year are free, but some of them, like the Solar Winery Tour and a couple of others, have a fee because there are fundraisers and you get a discount to those. You get access to a great clean energy community, and you get to be part of the clean energy movement. So I will drop a link in the chat, and this will go ahead and click on that link if you are interested in signing up for membership. A quick note also, one of our partners, Energy Trust of Oregon, a really great nonprofit that provides great incentives and great programs that help to foster clean energy and energy efficiency all across the state. They are our main partner and sponsor for this event. So a huge thanks to Energy Trust for helping us put together this event today. And finally, I know we've all been on the computer a lot lately because of COVID, and you may have used the Zoom platform. If you do, that's great, but if not, here are just a couple quick tips for how you can interact with us and make this presentation more exciting for yourself. The first one is the Q&A button. So you'll see this box on a bar at the bottom of your screen if you mouse over it. That says Q&A. Please ask questions. I love questions. We love questions. Please put them into the Q&A box because that will help make sure that we don't lose track of any questions. I will be recording all the questions that you enter into that box, and we're going to have at the end a Q&A session, and we'll try to get through all the questions. Another great feature of Zoom is the chat window. So that's where I just dropped this link for membership, and it's also where you can talk to everybody else in the webinar right now. So go ahead and click on the chat if you want to be chatty. And finally, we have a function called polling in Zoom. And this is where I can bring up a question. You get essentially a multiple choice. You click one of the boxes as you're answering, you hit submit. And when you do that, we collect all of the polling results, and then I can share the polling results. And we can see it's a great way to get feedback from the audience. And so I want to get started right now with a poll. And it is, how did you hear about tonight's event? I'm curious where you first learned about this. Was it through Solar Oregon? Was it an email from Eventbrite? Was it directly from the Energy Trust of Oregon? One of Coos Bay's great local event, businesses, or the library, or the college that helped us to promote this event. So go ahead and click your answer, and I will give us just 20 or 30 more seconds, and then we can take a look. And this is just our first example, or warm-up for polling today. All right. I'm gonna click the end poll button. And just to give you an idea of what it looks like when I share the results, we can see that it looks like a lot of folks are joining who learned about it from the college, which is great. Thank you. All right. So now with all of our introduction out of the way and our Zoom tools under our belt, let's get started with tonight's presentation. First, we're going to take a look at how can solar benefit me? What are the ways in which having solar is a benefit? And first, I think this is the one that comes to mind for everybody right off the bat, and that's that it's clean, renewable energy. And in fact, it's probably so prominent in most people's minds, I'm just going to skip right over that. because there are other ones that I think you're less likely to know about. So one big benefit of having solar energy is that it offsets your electricity bill, your electricity bill. And over time, that money that you otherwise would be paying to the utility, you're essentially saving that from the electricity that you're generating with your solar. So that over time helps to pay off the cost of the system. And then after that point, you get to keep all of that savings for yourself. So it's also a wealth generation tool. The next one, which I just touched on, is wealth building, right? This is something that solar is not a consumer product like a refrigerator is or a boat is. It's not just something that performs a specific function. It generates something that is valuable. It's a generative asset. You know, you can't have a coal power plant on your roof. You can't have a nuclear power plant on your roof. Please don't try. But you can have a solar power plant on your roof. And it's a great way to own the electricity that you generate. And the last benefit of solar that I want to talk about, and there's a little caveat here, is energy resilience. So this picture, if you take a look at it, just orient yourself for a second, you might realize that that's a power outage. And the one building on the right that has its lights on is able to operate without the electricity from the grid. It has a system to produce electricity. And solar is not in itself something that allows you to use electricity off grid. And I'm going to go into more detail about why that is when we talk about energy resilience. So it's not just solar, you need solar plus storage. And storage, again, are those batteries for your home or your business or your college campus. And so I'm going to have a whole section on this that's going to talk about the benefits of energy resilience. I want to take another poll at this point, and I want to ask, let me bring it up. What is your experience with solar? Do you know, you've heard of solar, but you really want to learn more? Are you actively considering it? Do you already have solar and or storage? So go ahead and take another 15, 20 seconds and just click your answer on the poll, and then we can take a look and see where we're all at. All right, we got one more. All right, here we go. It looks like most of us are here to learn more. Some of us actively considering it, and a couple already have solar plus storage. That's great. Thank you. So now let's talk about the fact that we live in the Pacific Northwest, and it is not the sunniest place. When you think of solar, your brain might first go to, oh, I don't know, Arizona or someplace in the desert Southwest where they get a lot of sunshine. Clearly, this is a photo over Portland with our nice clouds. It looks like this a lot of the time. And so you might be asking yourself, these solar panels that you'll see on the roof here, on this day, were they producing electricity? If so, how much were they producing? And is it enough to make solar worthwhile? And we could analyze this in a lot of different ways, but my favorite way to answer this question is to look at where is solar, who has the most solar? And I'm talking about a nation. Which nation has the most solar per capita? And you'll see this picture. And no, it's not the United States. And if you want, you can put into the chat where you think it is. I'm curious if anybody knows. Joanna says Germany. Kip says Germany. Yes. Wow, you guys are good. Germany, Germany, Germany. Maybe you've all been right here to Germany. Yes, it is Germany, and Germany loves solar. Number one per capita in solar. And if you compare Germany's climate to our climate, this is a map of the solar resource, so how much sun the surface of the Earth receives in the United States, and then over here in this box is Germany. And this scale, this is in a strange unit, kilowatt hours per meter squared per year. Don't worry about that, but you'll notice that from less sun, it goes deep purple, up to more sun, which is deep red. Germany is in the purples and the blues here. And up here in the Pacific Northwest, yes, there might be some blue up, particularly in Washington, but right around Coos Bay, we actually get considerably more sun than Germany. And again, this is more of a broad picture look at this, but just to underscore the fact that solar definitely does work here in Coos Bay. So how does solar work? I'm going to go over a little bit about what a solar system looks like and how it's put together on a basic level. Here is a diagram, and there are several components here. I'm going to walk through all of them. The first one is the photovoltaic panel, the solar panel. And the sunlight hits the solar panel and it produces electricity. It produces electricity in a voltage called DC voltage, direct current. And if you reach back, way back, maybe to third grade or fifth grade science class, you may have been told at one point what DC and AC are. DC, you can think of like flat lines, flat voltage goes in one direction. AC is like the waveform, it goes back and forth. You don't have to worry about that. But just know that solar panels produce electricity in DC, and your home and everything in it uses electricity in AC. So our next component in our solar system is an inverter or a microinverter, and that converts from DC to AC. I'll let you take a look in a second at the difference between inverters and microinverters. Once it's been converted, it can go into the home electrical panel and power all the circuits in your home. If there is excess electricity produced, it can go out of your home toward the grid through your utility meter. And your utility meter, if you have solar, is going to be replaced from a standard one direction meter that only records electricity coming from the grid into your home with a bidirectional meter, which records electricity flow in both directions, to and from the grid. And I'll explain in a second why that is. So this is the scheme that it really is central to how solar works for the residential market. It's called net metering, and it's essentially the process by which you can draw electricity from the grid and then also give electricity back to the grid. And when you give electricity back to the grid, you get credits from net metering that allow you to offset the electricity that you're pulling from the grid into your home. And so just to illustrate how this works in general on a monthly basis, take a look at this chart on the left. Here it's, this orange bar is how much electricity you're producing with your solar, and the blue bar is how much electricity you're taking from the grid, you're consuming from the grid. And if you are producing over the course of a month more than you are consuming, and in the Pacific Northwest, that's typically going to be in the summer months, then you're going to get a net metering credit for each kilowatt hour of electricity that you pull, or excuse me, that you put onto the grid. In the less sunny winter months, you will be producing less electricity. So it's true, on the cloudy day, your solar panels will produce less, but they will still produce. And this difference here between what you're producing and the larger amount that you're consuming from the grid that will be offset by the credits that you earned in the summer months. There's a couple different ways that you can place solar panels on a property. One of them, and the most common one, especially for residential installations, is roof mount. That's where you put the solar panels. They're set onto racking and put onto the roof. This is a way to conserve space. If you don't have the space on your property for a ground mount, then roof mount is the way to go, definitely. Ground mount, if you have the space, you can do, though you still will need to run a wire from the ground mount to your electrical panel. And so you'll have to trench, which adds just a little bit of extra cost. That's just one aspect to take into account when you consider what type of solar system that you want. So as promised, here's a look at this magical box called the inverter or microinverter that changes our solar panel's DC electricity to AC electricity. A central inverter will typically sit nearby the electrical panel, most commonly in the garage. It's a little bit larger box because it's converting for all the panels. Though if you have an inverter these days, you're going to also have a special box underneath each panel called an optimizer. With a microinverter, you don't have this centralized box. All you have is a small inverter underneath each panel or each pair of panels. So you don't need a box next to your electrical panel if you use microinverters. These systems both work. These are two very viable options. And a solar contractor can definitely walk through the ins and outs of both of them with you. And now let's take a look at how big of a solar system are you going to install. This is really based first and foremost on how much electricity you consume. So the reason for that is that, remember our net metering scheme where we're giving electricity onto the grid and we get credits, and then we take electricity back and we get a bill for that. Well, those credits that you're building up during the summer months, typically they do not roll over a net metering calendar year to the next year. So you don't really get a financial benefit from building a solar system that's larger than that which meets all of your electrical needs throughout the course of an average year. So that's the first thing that's going to limit the size of solar system that you'll want. Other factors are how much space you have. You may not have enough space to meet your entire electrical demand, or you may have enough space to meet your entire electrical demand and then some. That is often based on the size and shape and orientation of the roof, which we'll take a look at in just a little bit. Of course, budget can constrain a system size, and also aesthetics. If you live in an HOA or another organization like that that places restrictions on things you can do with your home, they may restrict your solar panels from being on a street-facing side of the home. There are ways to try to petition and get them to allow you to do that. And you have to work with your HOA, but that can be a constraint. The average system size, give or take, and there is a huge range here in the size of systems that you will see, but the average size is about 6 kilowatts. And that may offset, depending on how much electricity you consume, the majority or even the entirety of your electrical usage. So that's a little overview of the technology and gives you a good sense of what a solar system looks like and generally how it operates. How do you know if your home is right for solar? Do you have good solar access? Do you have the solar gold mine on your roof? Well, The first thing to note is that the sun follows a path through the sky that's very predictable. We're in the northern hemisphere, and so the sun rises in the east. It comes up in an arc. In the summer, it comes up a little bit higher. In the winter, a little bit lower, but throughout the entire year, it's going to be in the southern part of the sky. And then it sets in the west, of course. What this means is that your roof orientation is going to dictate how much solar access you get. That's going to be one of the biggest factors here. So here's a little example, a little in the field investigation. Let's take a look at a few homes, 3 homes here, and let's analyze their roofs. So you can see that these roofs are, some of them are pretty simple. The one over on the bottom right is just 2 roof planes, one to the north, one to the south. Some of them have south and west and east and north facing, and they have everything. So I've gone through and I've added a dot onto these roof panels. Green dots are on the ones that are south facing and that are west facing. And those are typically going to receive the best solar resource. I put a yellow dot on the east facing ones. Does anybody know why? You can put in the chat if you do. East facing is a little bit, typically a little bit less solar resource than west facing. The reason is because in the Pacific Northwest, we typically have mistier, kind of cloudier mornings, and then the sun comes out in the afternoon, and the sun is over in the east in the morning. And so that mist or cloud is going to be the slight dip in solar resource there. I put a red dot on all the north-facing slopes. You won't see solar panels on north-facing slopes of buildings unless they're really, really shallow, under 2 degrees of slope. Sometimes you'll see a north-facing roof with solar panels on it. Or very occasionally, you'll see a north-facing roof with solar panels that are tilted up, so the solar panels are still facing south. But that's very rare, and it requires a little bit more material. It can be a bit more expensive. The next thing to take a look at for your site, if you're wondering, do I have good solar resource, is how much space you have. You can have a south-facing roof plane, but if it's very small, you might not be able to fit more than a couple solar panels on there. And so I've just put a green box around the larger roof panels, yellow boxes around the ones that are more split up, that are harder to install a complete and continuous system on there. And you'll notice that there are roof vents. This is something that can commonly decrease significantly the amount of solar resource, because those roof vents you have to install solar panels around. You can't go over. So those are the 3 main aspects of the space on your roof. It also matters what type of roofing material you have. If you have a typical asphalt shingle roof or a standing seam metal roof, these are both great roofs for solar. You don't have to worry. If you have an exotic metal shingle roof, so it looks like these asphalt shingles, but it's made out of metal, that can be, it's doable, but it can be a bit more expensive to install on. And there's a whole range with different types of roofing materials. Cedar wood shake you can install on. The terracotta tiles you can install on. Each one might be slightly more or less expensive, so I would check with a contractor if you are concerned. The way that a solar system attaches to the roof is going to vary based on the roof type, and that's the reason why there is a slight different cost between different roof types. For these 2 most common roof types, asphalt shingle, standing seam, asphalt shingle, what you'll see, there's this large flat rectangle here, and you'll see this is the rail onto which the solar panel is installed. This large flat rectangle is called a flashing, and under here is a penetration into the roof they drill into and put a lug into the rafter in the roof. So there's a beam under there. And then they completely seal it up and they put a flashing over it. And the water flows over the shingle, down onto the flashing, around it. This is completely sealed here, and then it goes around down, continues on down the roof. So there's really very, very rarely issues with leakage on an asphalt shingle roof. With standing seam, there's no penetration at all. And the standing seam connection is just this bit right here, which screws on, bolts on to the seam itself, and it holds the solar panels up on top of the roof. Finally, your roof condition, the age of your roof, if you have especially an asphalt shingle roof, may determine whether you can go solar or not. With metal roofs last a long time, and so you typically don't have to worry about that. With asphalt shingle roofs, your roof can have a range of lifetime lifespans. It could be a 20-year roof, a 30-year roof. Regardless, it will need to be replaced at some point, and when you do replace your roof, you will need to take the solar panels off, replace the roof, and then put the solar panels back on. And of course, that process does cost money. It can be, it varies. Solar contractors provide this as a service. It can be a couple of $1,000s to several $1,000s. And so it's important, if you have an asphalt shingle roof that's in poor condition like this, you may want to re-roof before you go solar. For example, the Energy Trust of Oregon provides a solar incentive, but they require that you sign a slip of paper saying that you will not replace your roof within 10 years in order for you to receive that solar incentive. And finally, what's under your roof also can make a slight difference. The solar panels aren't very heavy. They don't add a whole lot of downward stress onto the roof, but the solar panels do sit a few inches above the roof. And so wind, as it moves over the panels, wind shear can actually lift the panels up and apply an upward stress onto the roof. This is rarely, I would say, an issue. If you have trusses, these prefabricated trusses, you'll see these rectangular metal attachment pieces right here, holding beams together with support beams that support the roof. Then you should be all good. You shouldn't have to worry about your roof structure at all. If you have just a single beam that runs along the edge of the roof called a rafter, and that rafter spans wide enough, it may be required by your jurisdiction that you take a look at the roof structure. That can add a little bit of money in terms of the analysis of the roof. It may not make or break a project. Very rarely will you find a roof that you simply cannot install solar on. So those are my quick and dirty solar inspection tips. Take a look at your own property and assess whether you have good solar resource and your site is a good home for solar. Let's jump now into this bit about energy resilience that I talked a little bit about in the beginning. And we're going to be talking about solar plus storage. So what is solar plus storage? It's just the combination of solar panels, maybe on the roof, and a battery, maybe in the garage. And this is really a winning combination when it comes to energy resilience. What is energy resilience? Well, energy resilience means that when the grid goes down, you're still able to use electricity. We're talking about just that aspect of energy resilience. And so if we take a look at this diagram, it's got several components. Don't worry, you don't have to understand all of them. But this is just going to show you how the grid produces electricity from typically a centralized power plant. And then that electricity goes through a set of systems, transmission system, substation, distribution system, before it reaches the end user. And so this electricity goes through, you can kind of think of it as the links in the grid chain. And if one of these links breaks, it can have effects that cascade down through the rest of the chain. And these grid disruptions can be caused by a number of things. Most commonly, when the grid goes down, it's either because of storms, maybe some snow or some wind or some rain, brought a tree down, which hit a power line. Squirrels also have caused very disruptive grid outages that have made world headlines. I guarantee you, if you Google squirrels and power outage, you'll find headlines around the world. However, so that's the main kind of background noise in grid disruptions. They happen all the time. You can't really prevent squirrels. You can't prevent storms. But there are some other things that are increasing in risk as we look forward into the future. One of them is the public safety power shutoff. If you were paying attention to headlines last summer, you'll remember that PG&E, the California very large investor-owned utility, started shutting down power to a large part of its grid all around the Bay Area and into Central California preemptively to try to prevent more devastating forest fires like the Paradise Fire that killed a lot of people. And so they weigh the risk of starting a fire versus the risk of what happens to people when you take their power away. And utilities will sometimes shut off the power preemptively like this. This is already happening, excuse me, in Hood River County in Oregon. And it's probably going to get more common looking forward as climate effects start to, and you know, a long history of poor fire management of the forests is building the risk of forest fire. The Oregon Department of Energy also recognizes cyber attacks as a significant risk to the electrical infrastructure. I don't know a whole lot about that, so don't ask me questions, but it is one of their priorities to prevent against those. And of course, the one that's most relevant, especially in Coos Bay, is Cascadia seismic hazard. If you don't know Cascadia, about the Cascadia earthquake that is expected, go ahead and put in the chat. But I know that a lot of folks in Coos Bay, you're probably very familiar. You're expecting a very large earthquake, and it's estimated that the power grid may go down from 3 to 6 months when that happens. It may take 3 to 6 months to restore electrical service after the Cascadia seismic hazard right along the coast. So that will be a huge disruption when it happens. And so solar plus storage is a technological combination that we look to build energy resilience. So the combination of solar panels and a battery allow you to produce and store electricity and then consume the electricity that you're producing. This is called islanding from the grid, when you use your own electrical circuits from energy you're producing without being connected to the grid. If you have just solar panels, you can't do this. You need batteries. And the reason is that with solar panels, first off, you need to, if you need energy when the sun isn't shining, you need to store that somewhere. And if you are connected to the grid and you had your solar panels producing voltage, that would be putting electricity out onto those grid lines, endangering utility workers who are trying to restore the power lines. And so it's international electrical code that your solar system shuts down when, unless you have batteries, of course, to store that energy. And then the end effect is that you are this person right here who can use electricity when the rest of the grid is down. And that is not just important for your own safety, but it is a way to be a resource for your community, for your neighbors. And so that's a big thing. Just a little bit about batteries. There are different products on the market. Many people have heard of the Tesla Powerwall. There's also Pika Energy, LG Chem, and Sonnen. Talk to a solar contractor. They will let you know what's on the market right now and may make a suggestion for you. When you get batteries for your site, you will be forced to make a decision between a partial backup and a whole home backup. A partial backup, you're just backing up certain, electrical circuits in your home. With a whole home backup, you're powering all the circuits in your home. The difference is with one battery, you can probably only achieve a partial backup unless you use a very, very small amount of electricity. You may need several batteries, 2 or 3, or maybe even 4 at this point to get a whole home backup with batteries at your home. Of course, that adds to cost, but for some people, that can be worth it. If you're looking to get a partial backup, maybe with a single battery, these are a couple of questions that you're going to be asked by the contractor you're working with who's helping to design this system. They're going to ask you, so what do you want to power? What needs power? And this might be a refrigerator to keep foods and or medicines cold. That can be really important during an outage. It could be some basic lights around the house and maybe an outlet for your computer for charging. You might not be able to add, your HGTV on there. You will most likely not want to add your hot tub on there, which is a huge energy usage. So don't count on those relaxing hot tub sessions right after the earthquake. And then they'll ask you for how long, because there is what we call the period of autonomy with battery systems. How long, once it's fully charged, how long does it take for you to deplete that using this predictable set of appliances that you have wired up to the battery? You may get an autonomy period of a couple of days, or it may be a little bit longer. It might be a week if you're lucky. If you have solar plus storage, of course, that's going to be increased versus having just storage because the solar panels charge the battery. How do you select which circuits? It's based on the circuit breakers in your electrical panel. And so what your contractor will do when you get a partial home backup is they'll say, which circuit breakers do you want to back up? You'll pick them out. They'll take those breakers and wire them into a new panel called the Essential Loads panel, a separate electrical panel. And those are the ones that they will wire up to the battery. And those are the only ones that will get that battery backup. So that is the overview of solar plus storage and energy resilience. Let's take a look at my final section here, which is all about the great incentives that are available to help you go solar. And I just see in the chat right now a question, will you be able to share the recording of this presentation? Yes, we're recording, and I will send out an email to everyone. You are free to reference this recording after the presentation. In terms of the price of solar prices have been declining for since solar has been around, but especially over the past decade. There's been a huge decline since 2010. A lot of this has been driven by one of the main federal incentives. It's a great incentive. It still exists, called the investment tax credit. I'll go over that in a second. But prices really are, just a fraction of what they were years ago. Prices continue to decline, but not quite at the clip that they were several years ago. And that's mostly now the declines are coming from kind of iterative technological changes and optimizations. So what incentives are there that can help you go solar? first off, the big incentive that I just mentioned, the investment tax credit, this is provided by the federal government. It is 26% of the project cost, and that covers both solar and storage if the storage is connected to a solar system. So that's a great incentive that can offset a lot of your solar cost. But of course, you need tax liability to take advantage of the investment tax credit. Another incentive is the recently introduced solar plus storage rebate out of the Oregon legislature. And that rebate just started in 2019, towards the end of the year. And they designated a pot of money, and then it got all consumed very quickly. And then they had a second pot of money, and it's been consumed again. They still have funds right now for low and moderate income families, and that can be significant. So definitely ask your contractor about that. It may depend on if there are funds available. And of course, the Energy Trust of Oregon provides great solar incentives. So what are these? Again, it's 26% with the investment tax credit. If you're on the low income qualification, you can get up to $5,000 for a solar system from the Oregon Department of Energy, and up to $2,800 from the Energy Trust of Oregon. One incentive I didn't mention right here is provided by a local utility in Coos Bay area, and I actually have a poll, and I would like to ask, what is your utility? The biggest utility that's connected to a lot of areas of the state is PacifiCorp. You will need to be a PacifiCorp customer to take advantage of the Energy Trust of Oregon incentive. You can't do that through any of the other utilities in the area, unfortunately. There are other utilities in this area: Central Lincoln, Coos Curry, Bandon Electric. I see a couple of others. If you have another utility, I'd be interested if you just put that in the chat. And I'll just wait a couple more seconds before I end this poll. Okay, I see in the chat Pacific Power. Pacific Power is PacifiCorp. They're synonymous, so that'll be PacifiCorp. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll. Looks like most folks are hooked up to PacifiCorp, aka Pacific Power. So you'll have the Energy Trust of Oregon incentives at your disposal, and that's great. If you are with Central Lincoln, they provide up to $2,000 incentive based on the size of the system. So check with Central Lincoln to get that information. If you aren't with either of those utilities, you may not have access to some of the locally based solar incentives, unfortunately. One note about the big federal incentive, the investment tax credit, that's that big 26% one. It has been at 30% for the past decade, roughly. Now it's at 26%. This year, it's stepping down, and it will be gone for residential starting in 2022. However, this incentive has been renewed several times by the legislature. It does depend on if the legislature finds it a priority. So it may go away or it may be renewed, and I'm not sure exactly what to tell you at this point. Finally, if you are a Pacific Power customer, PacifiCorp customer, Energy Trust of Oregon has a great solar within reach incentive that they just started up. This is for income qualifying homes up to $9,000 for your solar installation. It's based on the size, so if you have a smaller system, it might be a little bit less than that. And the income qualification here, for example, is if you're a family of 4, you would need to have an income of $77,520 or less to take advantage of this incentive. Check with Energy Trust of Oregon. Your contractor will have all this information as well. This can be a great incentive. And now let's go ahead and this is something that folks always want to see. They want to see, how much does a solar system cost? It's very difficult to say, and that's because a solar system, as we saw, the size of the system can vary widely. The roof type can have an impact on cost. The roof structure can have an impact on cost. And of course, incentives and your access to incentives can have a big impact on cost. So take this with a very large grain of salt. This is not necessarily representative of what you will see in a quote from a solar contractor. I highly recommend to everyone that's interested, go ahead and get multiple quotes from multiple contractors. And the contractors really are the ones who can tell you the most about what you have access to. But here, for your giddy pleasure, is a sample solar budget. And this is, in this example, a 6 kilowatt, that's the average size solar system. And we're saying that it is starting at a rough cost of $20,000. If you are a Pacific Power customer, you have access to the Energy Trust incentive. For non-income qualifying homes, that might be $1,800 for a 6 kilowatt system. For income qualifying homes, that could be $9,000. The net cost after that is broken down here. This is the state rebate, this ODO. This is the same thing, the solar plus storage rebate. Right now, there aren't any funds for the main pot, but for income qualifying homes, there are potentially up to $5,000. So this is what you'll pay out of pocket. So again, $20,000 system. It might be taken down a little bit. For income qualifying home, be taken down actually quite a bit. And then, of course, if you have tax liability, you get the following year when you do your taxes, you get 26% of that system cost back. And so that's going to drop it down to these final figures in the last row here. Again, just an example, definitely get a quote to see how much your solar system could be for your home. And I want to tie all of this up by saying that when you're talking about renewable energy, when you're talking about solar panels on your roof, you're creating energy. And it's great. Renewable energy is really important, but think conservation, think efficiency. If you conserve energy and if you use efficient appliances, upgrade to more efficient appliances, you can reduce the amount of solar that you need to offset all of your electricity. So that'll save you money, and it also saves the energy that you would otherwise be wasting. So really important to think of your energy holistically. Don't just think solar as the only solution. Think solar and conservation and efficiency. And there are a lot of great resources to learn about this. This can span from weatherization. If you don't have insulation, that can be have a huge impact. Also using efficient appliances like heat pumps, which are really great ways to heat space or cool space. So how do you get started down this path? Just a couple quick notes here. You are going to, sorry, my box is right in the way of my title. Can't read my own title. A great way to get information, find good contractors in your area is through the Energy Trust of Oregon. They have their solar trade allies. These are contractors that they have rigorously evaluated. They are good contractors. They're rated by the Energy Trust of Oregon. They have a star rating. And they have a tool, Energy Trust of Oregon does, to request a solar bid from 3 contractors in your area. That's this URL, energytrust.org/solarbid. I'm going to put this into the chat right now. So you can, oh, excuse me, I'm just putting that into the panelists. I need to put that into all guests. There we go. You can go ahead and put that into your web browser, and it's just a quick form, and then you hit submit, and then within a few days, the solar contractors will call you to set up a free consultation. And this is what this tool looks like right here. So go ahead, it's a great tool, and it's a great way to get started. How do you make your choice? Just like any other thing that you are purchasing, take a look at reviews of the contractor. Ask them, some contractors might offer specific products that they prefer. Others might install any product that you want. Ask them if they offer financing. Ask them about the warranties that come with the products that they're selling. And some contractors have a project pipeline that they're way backed up for months. And so you might sign the paper and it could still be months until your system is installed. It could be within a month or 2 on the short side, sometimes even slightly less than a month if it's a really, really fast turnaround. When you install solar, the contractor is going to take care of all of the paperwork and permitting and getting all of the incentives except the main federal incentive, which you file for when you do your taxes the following year. So it's really, most contractors offer a turnkey installation. So you sign on the dotted line and they'll take care of every aspect of the project. Installation typically takes 1 to 2 days, and the contractor manages inspections as well once the project is complete. And when it's complete, you have solar panels that are producing electricity, and you don't have to think about it. You can, and I encourage you to, because it's often very satisfying, but you don't have to because they just work. So that is my main basics of solar presentation. I am thrilled to have been able to deliver it. And now we're going to turn towards Jamie, who I'm so glad that Jamie can join us. He's got a great solar story, and he's here in Coos Bay. So Jamie, do you want to, I'll stop sharing and I'll let you take it away.
Okay. Oops. Guess I need to go back to the beginning. Well, hello, welcome to my home. I'm greeting you from this space. I presume everybody can see my cursor. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see.
And behind me is this house. This is the house my wife and I live in. This was my wife's baking house. We built this several years ago, and it's an earth berm, garden roof. And I've been involved or interested in architecture before I became a biology teacher. And so this has been one of my passions. Anyway, this is our whole system. We have, as you can see, when Zach was talking about production and use, during the summer months, here's the summer solstice, we produce almost 39 kilowatt. This is just 1 year, where we use about 10 during that. Obviously, we're banking a lot of energy. And of course, during the winter solstice, production is way down. And of course, our usage is up because of heating and other uses during that time. So that's the extent of our whole system. The rooftop is at present, a 5.9 kilowatt system. In the backyard, we have a ground mount tracking system at 3.4 kilowatts to make a total of just over 9 kilowatts. And this takes care of approximately, between the two houses, which are tied with one meter, it's all grid tied. It's about 1,200, no, it's about 2,000 square feet between this house and this house. So that's what we have at present. And as Zach mentioned, when we started with the original house here. The original house we bought existing, so it was a 1920s house, and we've added several additions to it. But our interest was to make sure that it was the most efficient we could with what we were given, and it was not at all oriented to solar, passive solar. So that's something, if you have the ability to do, if you're building new, you should always think about how passive solar can affect your house's efficiency. For instance, this one we built such that it could take advantage of the low angle during the summer, getting sunshine onto the slab floor all the way to the back wall. And in the summertime, when we didn't want extra heat, there's enough shading and overhang such that you can make sure that you aren't overheating the space. It's built with about 12-inch walls that are insulated concrete forms, which are these styrofoam forms that you fill with concrete. So it's a very tight, very well insulated home. Of course, the soil on top with the insulation underneath makes it especially well suited for an envelope that's very much like a Yeti cooler instead of a Coleman cooler. And so energy doesn't go in or out of this house very easily. Of course, being so tight, it has to have extra ventilation compensation. So even though you may be given a house that doesn't have those attributes, you can put some effort into making your home more effective, so that when you do add solar electric, you're going to get, you don't have to buy a larger system to make it work, to take care of your energy. When my wife and I first thought about energy, I grew up in a home in Idaho. My father was a heating and plumbing wholesale dealer, and he's also an engineer, and he added solar in the 70s to his water heating system to supplement, and it seemed to work fine. And so I was inspired by that, and when I moved to Oregon, I found that this system was fairly effective, and the state of Oregon incentivized using solar thermal. And so that was our first entry into the solar, other than adding more south windows to our home in the additions we made. And that was sometime in the 90s. I couldn't find my records when we put that on, but we finally replaced this space with solar electric and went to heat pump technology. We found that it was less costly overall, because these take much more maintenance than the solar electric. So our first solar electric installation, the first grid tied in Coos County, was barely 3 kilowatts for our house, because we found that we weren't using more than, say, 13 kilowatt hours during the on average throughout the year. So this one was making approximately, the contractor told us that this was going to take care of about 8 to 9 kilowatt hours per day. So we were taking care of about 60% of our usage. And that worked fine for several years until we built that thing. And I also built an electric vehicle with the help of an electrical engineer. in the mid 90s. And so that was another added, that house and the electric vehicle was added draw. And so we, and you can see the building here, we added another type of solar thermal, which is an evacuated tube. This type of system works best in cloudy climates, but I've found since that it wasn't much better than the flat plate. And that was in 2008. And then because of the addition of the electric car and this other house, the only other place in the property that was good for solar access was to the east of the rooftop in the yard. So we did a pole mount, and we did it with a tracking system, what's called a dual axis tracking. It follows the sun as it courses from east to west, as well as the different angles of the season. And it has a sensor at the top that allows it to do that. It's fairly exciting to see the first time it goes through its paces. This was just a do-it-yourself time lapse that I did from a ladder and took photos every so often. We call this the chicken run array because that's where the chickens live, right there. And that's the 3.2 kilowatt system. And so go on to the next one. In 2018, as Zach pointed out, the cost of solar electric has come down drastically. His graph showed it from 2010. If you go back to 2004, that line that was showing coming way down was way up even more in 2004. And we still decided it was worth the extra cash to put on solar electric. But since it had come down by nearly 2/3 or 3 times less costly than the original panels, we upgraded from 185 watt panels to these 370 watt panels. And we're now producing what you saw on the first slide. And I just cleaned these. You can see that these are kind of covered with something there. That's mostly pollen and some algae. And that's the only maintenance they require is an occasional washing. I have to get up there and just use water and a brush to take it off and take them off. We've also, we have heated our house with gas, and Margie's Bakery, this house next door, we had a gas oven in there for her business. But when she retired, we decided that we could look at the new generation of heat pumps and go all electric, which means all the transmission of electricity is it's not brought to us by Pacific Power. At least it's generated on site. And so we installed a heat pump water heater. It looks like what's called a mini split or a heat pump space heater, but instead of being piped in with coolant lines to a head that blows warm or cool air, this has a compressor and condenser in one unit, and you pipe it to a water tank. And that water tank is kept, and it's a fairly, it's higher temperature than the normal hot water heaters that you see, somewhere up to about 160 degrees. And if your house is very tight and is well insulated, and you live on the coast where the temperature fluctuations are not great, then you can heat with this system, space heat, as well as heating your domestic water. So this has served us well. It's not a very robust system. It wouldn't be for everybody. And again, it would not work in places like east of the Cascades or maybe even the Willamette Valley, again, unless you have a very, very efficient home. So this is where we are. This is the main house with the solar on the roof. And you can see that, as Zach mentioned, our house was not set up for solar. It was mostly west, east, and a little bit of south. This was an addition. This was the west-facing slope, and they were tilted to face south to add more efficiency. And of course, the tracking solar panels make up for quite a bit. And by the way, the difference between the tracking solar system, a dual axis tracker, and a fixed solar at the proper best placed position is about 17% more efficient. And you can see the roof of the guest house. Former bakery is here. And that's about it for this this property in Coos Bay. We've really enjoyed our system. We haven't spent our money elsewhere on other toys. This is what we enjoy doing, reducing our carbon footprint and taking advantage of Energy Trust's incentives and the state's tax incentives and the federal tax incentives.
Great. Jamie, thank you so much for sharing your story. I love all your systems. It's, I don't know, you just like, it's such an interesting kind of look at all these different types of solar, and it's so great. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing, I will jump us back to just a last slide here. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining. We've got some questions in the Q&A. And so I am going to read them. They're actually, we've got some great questions. You guys asked some good ones. Feel free, if you have more questions while we're going through these, to keep on typing in the Q&A box. I am going to try to get through all of the questions you have right up until 7:30. Thank you. If you need to jump off before we're done, thank you so much for joining. It's great to be here and to present just to Coos Bay. So our first one is, are microinverters compatible with storage? So again, I want to jump back here and show you the difference. Sorry for the flashing screen. I know that's annoying. Between inverter and microinverter. So again, the inverter, this is something that converts the electricity from DC to AC electricity. And you either have the central box, and you'll have something called optimizers that sit under each panel that goes with that central unit. Or you'll have microinverters where the inversion takes place with these little boxes all underneath the panels. And the question is, are these microinverters compatible with storage? And yes, both inverters and microinverters are compatible with batteries. So you can configure your system either way there, however you would like. Next, we've got a question about the federal tax credits. This question says, I have spoken with folks in the solar world and received opposite answers. If your roof is old and needs to be replaced, does the cost of the roof replacement count as the total cost of the project when you install solar? So the question is, if you have an old roof, you say, hey, I have to replace my roof in order to install solar. Can I wrap that roof cost into the solar cost and therefore get the big incentive, not just for the solar, but for the roof? This is a great question. And I used to work for a solar contractor previously, and I receive this question all the time. There are folks who will tell you yes, and folks who will tell you no. None of them probably are certified tax professionals. I would definitely ask a certified tax professional for their opinion. And it really comes down to whatever the federal government allows. I unfortunately am not a certified tax professional, so I don't want to give you any official advice. I wish I could, but know that some folks do say that you can wrap that cost in there. Do check with a professional before you actually do it. Great question. My next question here is a battery backup compatible with a propane standby whole house generator? So again, the battery is going to allow you to, it's going to allow you to, store energy and then use it later. And you can fill that with solar, where we've talked about solar plus storage. Storage is the battery. And that's a combination that's great for energy resilience. Of course, a propane standby whole house generator is another way to produce electricity. And yes, I believe that there is a good match between batteries and propane standby whole house generators. I can't answer that with 100% technical certainty, but if you get in touch with a contractor, they can definitely pour through all the technical details of the battery systems that they sell and let you know if there is a compatibility there. I do want to point out that propane and natural gas generators are another way to create electricity and energy resilience. One of the key findings of an energy resilience study for the state is that liquid fuel transport is not necessarily robust in the face of a large Cascadia earthquake. And so that's one of the reasons why solar plus storage can be more resilient than a gas generator and storage. Of course, a gas generator, if you have the gas, might give you a longer period of autonomy than a solar plus storage system. But if you don't have access to the gas, you can't generate any electricity. The sun will most likely rise the next day after the large earthquake. So that's a great question. I have a question here that says, if I already have solar, am I still eligible for the solar plus storage rebate? That's a great question. Unfortunately, you have to apply for that rebate before you make your installation. You can't do it after the fact. And so if you already have solar, you are not going to be eligible for this rebate retrospectively. Kip asks, what solar contractors serve the Coos Bay area? I wish I could tell you. I know that there are contractors that I don't know of, and Solar Oregon is a brand neutral nonprofit. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. I would say if you are interested in getting quotes from good reputable contractors, use the Energy Trust of Oregon solar bid tool. Again, that's energytrust.org/solar bid. And you just fill in the contents on the form. It's very quick and easy. And then several contractors who service your area will get back to you and will schedule a quote for you, or will tell you if you do not have good solar potential on your roof, and they can see that from Google Maps. Our next question here is, I thought that the Solar Plus Storage and Energy Trust of Oregon incentives couldn't be combined. They definitely can be combined, and so there shouldn't be an issue there. I would talk to your contractor. You may not have access to the state Solar Plus Storage rebate funds if there are none left until they renew the pot of money. So that there may be a limited access there, but if there is access to it, you should also be able to take advantage of Energy Trust. And this is a great question. Do you know of any good financing options? Yes, though I would say the best way to find a financing option, you can sometimes look through a lender that you have a good relationship with, that you really like. Um, a solar contractor will often have relationships with financing providers, and talking to a contractor can be a great way to find an institution that lends specifically for solar projects. And there can be a difference there between just a general kind of institution that doesn't make specific solar financing products versus one that makes financing products for solar. And that is because when you purchase the system, you pay a certain amount up front, and then you take advantage of the large federal tax credit. And so they can allow you to refinance at that point at which you have received that, that tax benefit. And so that can be a way just to optimize your financing package. Definitely talk to a contractor if you are interested in financing, and they can walk you through the basics. Can you have a combination of grid tied and storage? Yes, absolutely. And thanks for asking that. That's a really important thing to note, that everything I'm talking about in terms of energy resilience is definitely for grid tied. You can add batteries. There are batteries that you can't add to a grid tied solution just for off the grid usage. And there are batteries that work well with just grid tied installations. But that is what we're talking about when we're talking about islanding from the grid. It's when you have a battery attached at the grid. All right, we've got a couple more questions here. Are the components available for the DIY do-it-yourself homeowner to install? That's a great question. There are kits available in certain areas. I know of ones in Colorado. I believe they exist in Oregon. It is far more common to have a contractor install your solar system, though I believe there are products like that. Know that if you do install your own, you will have to, you may not have access to, for example, the Energy Trust of Oregon incentive. That's one thing. And there will be a lot more project management, applying for incentives, and then managing the inspection of the project once it's done. If you love DIY projects and that sounds more exciting to you, then I wish I had good resources, but I would say, yes, take a look. There may be products out there that you can install. All right, I've got my last question here. How much can I expect solar to pay toward my electric bill? And that's great. This really depends, like we were talking about when we talked about the solar site and sizing the solar system. You may be constrained by the amount of space you have. You may be constrained by budget. If you have enough space, you can sometimes install a system that will offset all of your electrical usage. And the important thing to note there is that it's offsetting the electric utility bills that you would otherwise receive. And so the solar system through net metering is, it's paying your electric bills, but it's really just that it's offsetting it. And so the answer is that you can offset up to 100% of your electric bill, depending on the size of your system. Most often you'll offset the majority. Sometimes you'll have a system that offsets just a little bit of the electric bill, but it still adds value there. And we have one more question here. If I want to add storage to an existing solar system, are there any rebates I would qualify for? Yes, again, I am not a licensed tax professional, but I believe, and again, check with a professional, but I believe that the federal incentive, the investment tax credit, if you're tying this storage system into an existing solar system, it will still apply for the storage. However, if you are installing a battery system that is not going to be tied to a solar system, that will not qualify for the federal incentive. The state solar plus storage rebate, I'm not sure. I would check with a contractor and they may be able to answer that better than I can, if you would still qualify for that state incentive. And I've got another question. Keep them rolling. If you've got more questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A box. We've got still a few more minutes here. Will installing solar raise my property taxes? That's a great question. The solar system will raise the value of your home. However, there is a law, and I believe it is on the state level. I believe it's all of Oregon. And Jamie, if you know anything about this, feel free to chime in. But I believe that you do not pay taxes on that extra value created by your solar system. I believe that's statewide. I know that's in the Portland area. Jamie, do you have any?
Yeah, we haven't seen any increase in our taxes due to the solar. We haven't had those specifically assessed for that, but I believe that's true. Doesn't increase your tax liability.
Which is, in effect, that's an incentive, and one I didn't mention, but it's a great incentive. It increases the value, so your home may be worth more if you sell it, but you're not taxed on that value. And another question here is that 6 kilowatt a daily, so we're talking about, for example, let me run through here to find the sample budget. We're talking about the average size system. Is that 6 kilowatt a daily electrical total seen with the average size installation of 18 to 20 panels? And yeah, an 18 to 20 panel installation is typically around 6 kilowatts. So there's, in this question, is the answer to it is kind of getting at the difference between kilowatt and kilowatt hour. And so this gets into understanding, the units of electricity and quantifying that. It's not overly complex, but it can be pretty confusing when you first look at it. Kilowatt is a rate of power. So if it were, you can often compare electricity to water flowing. And if you're talking about the rate of like gallons per minute of water coming out of a hose, that would be the kilowatts. It's a rate of electricity usage is kilowatts. Kilowatt hours is like a volume of water. So that would be like a gallon of water would be a kilowatt hour. Again, this is just an analogy between electricity and water, if that helps you understand it. But when we say a 6 kilowatt system, that's different from kilowatt hour. The kilowatt there is the nameplate rating of a solar panel. And if you think about it, think of it this way, if this helps you. If you're holding this solar panel up to the sunlight, it will produce electricity. This is related to, but is not at the rate necessarily of its nameplate rating, 6 kilowatt. If you turn it away from the sunlight or put it in a dark room, it's not going to be generating any electricity, but the nameplate rating still says 6 kilowatts. It's just a way of quantifying the relative power of a solar panel, given known amount of solar energy falling on it. Jamie, do you have a point there?
Yeah, I think I mentioned before that our three kilowatt system, the original one, was slated to produce 8.6 kilowatt hours per day on average throughout the year. I mean, it'll do more than that when the sun is shining during the summertime, less than that, but that was its average per day production. So you can kind of get an idea. And it was 3 kilowatt nameplate system, but it produced on average 8.6. Again, that's average per day throughout the year. And so it would produce up to, let's say, 15 kilowatts during the summer solstice and down to 3 kilowatt hours a day during the winter solstice.
Yeah, so it can be confusing, but know that there's a difference between the nameplate rating of a panel and how much it's producing given certain sunlight conditions at any given time. Thanks for that, Jamie. And this, I am going to call it as our last question. If you have other questions, go ahead and I will put my email in the chat here, and feel free to email me any questions that you have. But I'm going to end with Kip's question here. Are there any state or federal rebates for off-grid systems? That's a really good question, and I'm unfortunately not sure that I can answer that. I'm not as familiar with off-grid systems. They're a little bit less common. They're also tend to be quite a bit more expensive compared to on-grid systems, though the total cost of an off-grid solar system can be less than asking the utility to run a line all the way to your property, depending on how far away that is. So there are situations where you might want to go off-grid. The reason it's more expensive to do an off-grid system, significantly more expensive, is because you have to add batteries and quite a bit of battery capacity to store energy, enough energy that you'll be able to use the lights and refrigerator and appliances that you want in a home off-grid. As to whether rebates apply to them, my gut sense tells me no, but I could be wrong on that. So if you have a project in mind, check with a contractor and they can run through all the relevant information with you on that. All right. I'm going to call that as our last question. Thanks again so much for joining us. I'm glad that we got what I feel is a pretty great showing today, great audience. I'm glad that there's enough, that there's this much interest in Coos Bay, in solar in Coos Bay. And I'm really excited. This is the first time we've done a Basics of Solar specifically for Coos Bay. And I hope to bring more programming your guys' way in the near future. Yeah, I will hope to see you all again soon. I hope that you had a great 4th of July weekend and you are continuing to have a great summer despite being maybe a little bit cooped up. And thanks again, Jamie, for joining us. It was really, really great to have you on here and to have your story.
Quite welcome. Thank you, Zach.
All right. Again, a recording of this event is going to be produced. I will have that up on our YouTube channel, and I'll send all of you an email with a link to it in the next couple of days. You can take a look for that. I will hopefully see you guys soon. Have a great day, and go solar.
Yeah, you're here.